Beis Amid Beis. Beis Amid Beis on the bottom, Tanan. That's what we're holding, right? Yeah, so we thank Hashem that we're able to learn every morning. And because of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Bir for Shleima for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah and Aaron David Alevi ben Mincha Lester, Avram Rafal ben Sarah. Okay, so we learn in the Mishnah, Tanan, Mashkin Beis Hashlachim ben Moed B'Shvius. Quotes our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that you can water a Beis Hashlachim, a field that actually needs the water. If it doesn't, it's going to dry out because it's on the mountain, or different types of things that require water. And you're allowed to water them on Chol HaMoed and then Shemitah. The Gemara says like this. We're explaining what's going on here. Bishleima Moed mishum tirchahu ubamakom seida sharu rabbanan. It's good. In other words, it works out well. We understand Chol HaMoed, why you're allowed to do this, because what's the problem of doing work on Chol HaMoed? That's a problem of tircha. There's actually a verse that Rashi, the first Rashi, quoted, just like the Shviyas is atzar basiyas malacha. Atzar means you stop, to refrain. Also, the 6 days, you have to also refrain. But what do you refrain from? The sages tell us what to refrain from. What are you supposed to refrain from? Well, something that's a tircha, anything that's a bother. So, something that's going to be a loss, and it's not such a big tircha. So, if it's going to be a loss, the sages tell us that it's not such a big tircha. Maybe you can imagine that it's not considered a tircha depending on the value of it. You know, it would be considered a tircha if there was no value to it. But here, because there's going to be a loss, so the level of tircha goes down. Maybe that's the shot. However, but when it comes to Shemitah, the word shari, it means mutter. Whether you're going to follow, on Friday, we had the two opinions over here. What plowing, not plowing, what watering is, on what malacha is watering. We had two together. We had weeding and watering. We had a machlekes between Rabba and Rabbi Yosef.
You have the word shari.
Me shari? You don't have the word shari there? I have to see that. Come on. Okay, I'll take a look. So, on Shemitah, we're talking about watering. We're talking about watering the field. What is the prohibition of watering a field? Let's say it would be Shabbos. So it's a machlekes between Rabbi Yosef and Rabba. Rabba says watering is similar to plowing. You're preparing the soil to stimulate you should be able to grow things in the soil. So the watering is for the soil. And Rabbi Yosef says watering is like planting. You're directly stimulating you're making it grow. So the Gemara says, well, I don't care which one it is. It's Shemitah. And you're not allowed to work the field or cause the growth on Shemitah. So if it's Chol HaMoed, so I get it. There's going to be a loss. Oh, a loss. Oh, that's a different story. But Shemitah, well, how does that come in? You're allowed to do things on Shemitah because there's going to be a loss? Like, why are you allowed to water the field because there's going to be a loss? Right? There's always a loss. The whole Shemitah is a loss. Okay. Amar Abaya says, you have to hear this. It changes the whole Gemara. Amar Abaya, b'shviyas bizman hazeh v'rebihi. There's a machlekes if Shemitah nowadays is considered a deraisa. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rebbe has this opinion. And this is the matter of the Shemitah. You should shemait, means you you like refrain, like you let it go, the loans. You let the loans pass. You don't collect the loans. The pasuk is talking about two shmitas. Achar shmitas karka, v'achar shmitas ksafim. One is that you let the land lay fallow, but you don't plow the land. Another one is we're on B 2B on the bottom.
Oh.
Probably one more. Let's see. Let me see the thing. Yeah, somewhere over there. So I like 3 lines on the bottom, 4 lines on the bottom. And then there's the shmita of the money. If you lend money, you don't collect it. So bisman shat the mishamit karka at the mishamit ksafim. When you let the land lay fallow, that's the time when you also don't collect the debts. You hear what's going on? Not always do you let it lay. Do you let the land lay fallow? Bisman shiyat the mishamit karka yat the mishamit ksafim. There are times when you don't. That means there are certain times when Shemitah doesn't apply. When exactly does Shemitah apply or not? Maybe it has to do with Yovel, it has to do with Bisman Abayas, maybe it has to do, it doesn't tell us exactly what the Shita of Rebbe is, but it turns out that there are certain times that Shemitah is not the biblical law. Yeah, Shemitah would be the Rabbanan. So why are you allowed to water a field on Shemitah? The field's going to dry out. It's going to be a loss. The teretz is it's the Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan allowed it. The whole Shemitah is only the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan allow if there's going to be a loss. Sounds like a lot of leniencies are going to come out of this. Rava Amar Rava says no. Afilu tema Rabbanan. You could even say it's the Rabbanan. Now, this is a little confusing because he doesn't mean that it's Shemitah's the Rabbanan. He means that there's a machlekes Rebbe in the Rabbanan. Rebbe says Shemitah bismana says the Rabbanan. That nowadays Shemitah is rabbinic. The Rabbanan say Shemitah bismana says the Araisa. So the Rabbanan say that it's the Araisa. So Rava says no, it's following the Rabbanan. Shemitah is the Araisa. Shemitah is the Araisa. You're allowed to water a field if there's a loss. So it says Rava says Avis Asar Rachmana told us Layasar Rachmana. You're only not allowed to do the Avis Malachis on Shemitah, but told us our mutter. Diksiv, on top of 3a. Diksiv, Bashana Shvius, Shabbos Shabbos Nialar, Tzadchali Sizra. In the 7th year, it's a resting for the land. You don't plant the field and you don't prune the vineyard. Michti, the Gemara says. Let's see. In your card, Michti means now that. But in Yeshiva, they translate it. Let's see. Zmira Bichlal Zriya. Pruning was included in planting. That's a type of stimulating growth. Ubetzira, that's picking the olives. Bichlal Ktsira, that's included in harvesting grain. It would go under the same category. It's a tolda. So Lamai Hilchasa Kasvinu Rachmana. So why does the Torah say specifically these are the things on Shemitah that you're not allowed to do? We could just have the general rules. L'meimra, it's coming to tell me that Hani told us Machayev Achrin Alay Machayev. It's coming to tell me that there are specific activities told us that are Chayev, and there are some that aren't Chayev. The others are not Chayev. That means that watering is not one of the ones that would be Chayev. And that's why it would be lenient. That's why it's allowed if there's a loss. We're not talking about Shemitah Midarabanan. The whole Shemitah only forbids certain, even Shemitah Midaraisa only forbids certain malachas. Gemara says, V'loi. You don't have the other malachas. You're allowed to do certain malachas in the field on Shemitah. Is this really so? The Gemara, it's like V'loi, it's like a surprise. And not, you don't have it. V'hatanya, but we have a brisa. It says Sadcha le'sizra. Brisa quotes a pasuk. Your field you cannot plant, you cannot sow. V'karmecha le'sizmar, and your vineyard you can't prune. Ein li'ela ziru avazimar. I would only know that you can't plant and you can't prune. Minayin le'nikosh or le'ider or le'kisuach. How do you know you're also not allowed to do nikush? Nikush was to weed, to take the weeds out, to pull them out of the ground. Either is to hoe, to soften the soil around the roots, so the water should get in. Also, someone explained to me that that for the roots to grow, you can't have any air pockets, because an air pocket is like a wall against the root. So what you really need is all the soil to settle. So to stimulate the roots to grow, you have to make sure that it's soft, so that and then when you water it, it packs it down. That helps the roots grow. I thought it was just so the water should get in. So water would be good for the roots, but apparently it's for the growth of it's for the air pockets also. So the either the kisuach is to cut away the weeds. Yeah, nikush is to pull them out. Kisuach is to cut them. Okay, how do you know that you're not allowed to do these as well? Yeah, it's what it should have said. What the pasuk, what the Gemara was expecting the pasuk to say is loy sizra sadcha, loy sizmar karmecha. Don't sow your field. Don't prune your. It doesn't do that. Don't prune your vineyard. It says your field you shall not. Your vineyard you shall not. So because it says it in that expression, you shall not, sounds like it's including a lot of things. Loy kol malacha shebesadcha, v'loy kol malacha shebekarmecha. You can't do any of the work in your field. You can't do any of the work in your vineyard. Minayin she'ein mekarsimin bein mezardin bein mefaskin be'ilan. What about by the trees? How do you know you're not allowed to prune trees? How do you know you're not allowed to mezardin? Would be to cut off the dry branches. And mefaskin is to support a tree that's young, a soft tree to support it. How do you know you're not allowed to do that on Shemitah? Talmud Leimar, sad chalai, karma chalai. It's not talking about trees though. It's talking about a field and a vineyard. You're not allowed to do anything. I don't know why this had to be divided up into another category. Seems like it's the same thing. How do you know that you're not allowed to fertilize? That you're not allowed to remove the heavy branches? Remove the rocks. Mefarkin is to remove the stones that are growing around the roots. Bein ma'avkin, two pshatim over here. One is to cover the roots that get exposed, to cover it with dirt. Another pshat is to remove the dust from around the trees, from maybe it means the leaves or something. I'm not sure. Bein ma'ashnin. Ashnin means to smoke. And how do you know you're not allowed to smoke under the tree to kill worms that are growing in the tree? I didn't know this is how they did it. Fumigate. Fumigate. Do they do that today to trees? No, they use pesticides. Okay, so in the olden days they would smoke it, smoke them out to kill them. Talmud Laimar, it said you're not allowed to do this. Sad chalai, karma chalai. We're talking about the way that the wording is here. Kol malacha shebesadcha lai, kol malacha shebekarmecha lai. All the work of the field, no. All the work of the vineyard, no. You're not allowed to do that. Yachal, I could have thought that you're also not allowed to do the following. Maybe you can't soften the soil to hoe under the olive trees. And you also can't hoe under the grapevines. Yeah. Kashkish sounds like the. No, it sounds like the. What does it mean? To shake it?
To scribble. To scribble.
Scribble?
Kashkish is to scribble.
Yeah. So here it means, Rashi tells me that it's either, and either meant to hoe. So so maybe I think I can't hoe under the olives, and I can't hoe under the gefanim, under the grapevines. I can't fill up the pools with water. Maybe I can't make those circular areas to hold water near the roots. Talmud Laimar, Sadcha le'sizra, it says your field you shall not sow. Zriya b'chlal haisa. Sowing was, planting the seeds was already included. Lama yatis, why is it telling it to me specifically? Lahakeshela, it's coming to tell me a comparison. Just like planting seeds, that's something that's done in both a field and in a vineyard. Also, anything that's in a field and in a vineyard is going to be prohibited. But things that are not in both, what would not be in both? Kishkush, which is only in a vineyard. It's not in a field. They don't have to soften the soil under the grain. It's only right. And also Eder, which is the hoeing, and also the waters that they collect, and also the ugios, which are also the circular pools that they put around the roots. So that's only in the vineyard, that's not in the field. So it's telling me that the only thing that's prohibited are things that are in both the vineyard and in the field. This was a long question. The question is that we said before that the only things that are forbidden, really Shemitah, according to Rava, really Shemitah is deraisa bisman hazeh, following the Rabbanan. But there are certain, but the only thing that's actually forbidden are avis malachis. But the toldos are permissible. The toldos are permissible. We have this long brisa tells me that you're not allowed to do anything except for the watering things. A few things that you're allowed to do, but everything else is prohibited. But that's just watering. Yeah, but you're not allowed to actually go in water. You're allowed to soften the soil under the roots, but you're not allowed to go in water. You wouldn't be allowed to water. So why are you telling me you're allowed to water? So the Gemara answers midrabanan. The brisa that you just quoted, that tells me psukim and limudim from psukim, that's not biblical. That's all rabbinic. So why do you tell me psukim? Across Machtabalma, those psukim are just a support for the rabbinic laws. Yeah, the Gemara does this sometimes. We have things that look like it says it in the Torah, and the Gemara says actually that's not a real source. That's just a way of smachta to help you remember. No, I don't know the halacha today. Shemitah today, the Raisa, the Rabbanan. Is Shemitah today, the Raisa, the Rabbanan? I don't know.
I'm fascinated by this distinction between toldos and halvos and toldos.
Right.
Probably seen that.
Right.
Shabbos.
Right. Yeah. And it seems, according to Rashi, it's a Avis and told us here is a Hilchah Shabbos Avis and told us. That's what it's not like just category and subcategory. It's okay. Now the Gemara says, the kishkush b'shvius mishari, are you allowed to hoe on Shemitah? On the Shemitah year, you should let it lay fallow. How do they translate those two words? Tishmetana means you leave it, and what does a natashta means also you leave it. What are the two? Is there in English?
To desert it or leave it?
Yeah.
Natash, to desert.
Desert.
Leave it and forsake.
To leave it.
Leave it and forsake it. Okay. Same thing. Yeah, we have to figure out why the pasuk has a double expression. But it says like this. Tishmetena, you leave it, milakashkish, from hoeing. and atashta milasakel, and you forsake it from removing the rocks. So you see, you're not allowed to hoe. It's a pasuk. It's a problem. The Brisa told us that there's certain malachas that are mutter. You're allowed to hoe. We have a pasuk that pasuk the tells you that what does it mean tishmetena? It means that you're not allowed to hoe. Amar Ravukva Bar Chama. Ravukva Bar Chama says trei kishkushi havi. There's two types of hoeing. Chad avruyi lana v'chad tsesumi pilei. One, it makes the tree grow better, and one of them just fills in cracks. Avruyi lana yaser. To make the tree grow better, it's aser, and tsesumi pilei is shari. But to fill in the cracks, that's mutter. We mentioned before the cracks that it makes the roots grow. You know who taught me that? Robert from Robert is here.
Robert was here.
It's a guy who has a store in
Homestead.
Homestead.
Yeah. Check it out.
Agriculture.
He grows this stuff.
In class, he came to
Don't drink the
class.
milkshakes.
No,
You went down there.
Don't drink the milkshakes, not kosher.
no. When you go to his store, it's not a store to buy. It's like a whole education.
Right.
Every fruit he gives you a story along with it, and like takes like 20 minutes to get it to buy a few fruit. Okay, it's an experience. It's not a.
His daughter was my student.
Oh, yeah?
20 years ago. I went to see him. I said, I had a girl who said her father ran the store. I said, you? He says, yeah, but she's married. She has 3 kids now. You want to talk to her on the phone?
Yeah.
That's Robert.
Yeah, it's a cool place. They have like a farm in the back. Yeah.
Entrance.
So okay, we learned there's two types of hoeing. One of them is aser and one of them is not. Depends if it's filling in cracks. That would be acceptable. Okay.
Well, these particular for the future. they're not
That's the
correct,
problem, right?
right?
Right.
Distinguish from the other one.
Uh-huh.
So
That on
for
Shemitah,
the future,
it would still be acceptable. It's sort of like medicine. Medicine, fixing a problem, that's acceptable. It's going to, but you're not allowed to improve it, like, Itmar. We have a statement of Amiraim. It's usually introducing a machlekes of Amiraim. It says, it's a compound word, is amar. It has been stated. Mar is like the word amar. And is means there is. There is a saying. Achirish b'shvius. Someone plows on Shemitah. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar, it's machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar were chavrusas for a short period of time after Rish Lakish passed away. Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas. Chad amar leike, v'chad amar eina leike. Does a person get malchus? Does it get lashes if he plows on Shemitah? It's a machlekes. It doesn't tell us who holds what. But what's the issue here that's being discussed? The Gemara says, maybe what they're actually arguing about is a statement by Rav Avin in the name of Rabbi Lai. Amar Rav Avin, Amar Rabbi Lai. Rav Avin says in the name of Rabbi Lai, Kol makom shenemar klal ba'aseh uprat b'leis aseh, ein dan naisa b'klal uprat u'klal. The way it works is like this. If you have a general statement, and then you have a detail, so that detail tells me that everything that you said in the general statement is limited just to that detail.
Huh.
We have this by I don't know an example. anyway, but klala pratikla. Yeah, you have it by Shavas Aveda or something. Yeah, that's a klala. Okay, then what happens if it's a general rule, just a general statement? Then there's the details, and then it concludes with another klal, with another general statement. So the Gemara says that what that's doing is it's not just the details, it's anything that is similar to those details, a full category. Ke'ena prat. Anything that's similar to those details includes everything. So it includes everything except for it leaves one thing out. It leaves something out. Klala prat klal. So what Rabbi Oven says, the name of Rabbi Lai is like this. Let's say I have a general rule that's a positive command, and then I have a detail in a negative command, and then I have a general rule afterwards. Is that considered a klala prat klal? Or do I say that they're separated? So Rabbi Oven says that it's considered a klala prat. It's not considered a klala prat klal. So here by Shemitah it would go like this. The pasuk says, on the 7th year, Shabbos and Yela Aretz. The 7th year, the land needs to rest. It's a general rule. It would tell me everything. Can't do any malachas. The land needs to rest. Don't do anything to the field. Then I have that's a positive command. I said don't do anything, but really it says it needs to rest. Shabbosin. That's positive. Then
it says don't work.
Then it says, your field you shall not sow, and your vineyard you shall not prune. Okay, those are two details in the negative. So it's a klal of an asay, a prat of a leis asay. So, and then it goes back and it says, Shabbos Shabbosin, or Shabbosin yelaretz. It says, it gives a general rule at the end. So Rabbi Oven says, Kol makom shenemar klal ba'asay, prat b'leis asay, ein dan noiseh b'klal prat klal. It's not considered klal prat klal. It means it doesn't include everything. It doesn't include everything. It's only limited to the klal prat, to those details specifically, which is only sowing and pruning. Manda Amar, like the one that says that you get malchus for plowing, it's because he doesn't hold of Rav Oven. Leslie, the Rav Oven Amar Abilai, he holds that it is a klal prat klal, and it's including everything. And so therefore you get malchus. He doesn't hold of Rav Oven. Manda Marino, like the one that says you don't get malchus, is like the Rav Oven. He says, yeah, because this is not a klal prat klal. It's only a klal prat. It's only a general and a detail. And the detail doesn't, one of those details is not plowing, so you don't get malchus.
So what good is the general? If the only thing that applies to the specific, then the general is like a wasted thing.
Yeah. Well, so what is the general?
Throw it.
Every soldier needs a general.
I'm not sure. I have to look it up. You know, at the end of Masechta Brachos, there's a like this essay on all of these, all of the rules. It's called Mavaya Talmud, Introduction to the Gemara. It's printed at the end of Masechta Brachos.
Is it correct that no longer use these things? It's possible to-
Yeah, well, we can't. We need a tradition for them. For sure, Gzeir Shava. But yeah, the Malbim had an interesting theory that based on the grammar, the diktuk, that he actually knew the rules based on, he worked out rules of drushes. That yeah, based on if the verb and the noun, if it's before or after, and he figured it out. Yeah.
I'm asking if people today use these 13 years to.
No, only the ones that are recorded.
So why do we say it?
Because that's the way it was learned. That's the way it was learned. In other words, the sages here are using those rules to, but I can't open up a chumash and then look at the Rabbi Shmuel and then figure it out. The Gemara says, like, that's not the machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar. The Kuli Alma Leslie the Rabbavan Amar Rabbi Lai. Everyone disagrees with him. No one holds of this. Everyone holds it's a klal, a prat klal, and it's going to include everything. So Mandamar like Shaper, very good. It says gets malchus for plowing. Plowing is included. It's right. It's a general, specific, and general includes everything. Mandamar ain't like it. The one that says that you don't get malchus. Well, why not? Amalach, he says like this. Michti. Let's see. Zmira bichlal zriya. Pruning was included in planting. Ubetzira bichlal ktsira. And harvesting the grapes, the olives, plucking the olives was included in harvesting grain. So why did the Torah have to specify that? Lameimar is coming to tell me that Hani told us that not all told us are chayiv. Remember, Rava said this before. Rava told us only Aves and Shemitah are chayiv. So that would be the pshat. It doesn't tell us who holds this, Rabbi Yochanan or Rabbi Lazar. But the one that holds it, you don't get malchus, is because he follows Rava's view. Gemara says, V'lai. We're going to have a repeat of the question that we had on Rava. You're not chayav for all the malachas. For the told us, Tanya, but we have a brisa. Sad chalisis, Rav Charma chalisis. We had this brisa earlier today. Your field you shall not sow, and your vineyard you shall not prune. I only know sowing grain and pruning. How do you know that softening? It's mixing it together. Softening the soil, whether it's on by this tree or that tree, and kisuach is, we said that was cutting the weeds away. How do you know that's also aser? You can't do any of the work in the field. How do you know that you're not allowed to prune and you're not allowed to what was mizarden was to trim away the dry branches. And mefaskin was to support the young tree. Probably. Any work in the field, you can't do any work. In the vineyard, you can't do. How do you know you're not allowed to fertilize, remove the stones, and you're not allowed to fumigate the trees? You can't do any of that. Maybe you can't hoe under the olives groves. You can't hoe under the grapevines. You can't also make those areas for water. Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says this you're allowed to do. That you can't sow your field. Why does it have to specify Zriya? To tell me, to do a comparison. Only things that are done equally in fields and in vineyards, which excludes things that are only done in the vineyards but not in the fields. Those are permissible. So now we have a question. Why are you telling me that Avis Malachas are Aser and the Toldos are Mutter? We have a bunch of Toldos over here that are Aser, and it seems like it's from the Torah. The Gemara answers Midrabanan. It's only rabbinically forbidden. That's why you don't get malchus. The cross asmachta ba'alma and the pasuk that you're quoting, that was only an asmachta. Okay. Kiyasa Rav Dimi. When Rav Dimi came, now Rav Dimi was a traveler, so he would go from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, and he would bring statements. He says a statement, very interesting. He says, "Yachol yilkel atisefes." Maybe a person should get malchus for the additional things. But the Talmud says that he's exempt. So, okay. But I don't, he says, here's a statement that I heard. I don't know what it's talking about though. I don't know what's the additional things, and I don't know what the Talmud is, what the teaching is that tells me that it's exempt. So, Rabbi Lazar Amar Charisha. Rabbi Lazar says, you know what we're talking about here? talking about plowing. Figured it out, by the way. Before we didn't have clear what who said what. If there's malchus for Harisha, Rabbi Yechon Elazar Chadam Alaika v'Chadam Reina Alaika. Didn't tell me who says what. Just one says this, one says that.
So we're talking now about plowing
On Shemitah. Yeah.
What's extension mean for the extension?
So it goes like this. V'achi Karma, this is what it means. Yachal Yilka ala Harisha, da Asim Miklal Prata Klal. Maybe you should get malchus for plowing on Shemitah because that would be included in the Klal Prata Klal. The general, the detail, and then the general. We said that includes everything that's similar to the details. Just like the details are in the field and work in the field, so too plowing. But the teaching tells us that it's exempt. What was the teaching? Because otherwise, why do you need the details? Just leave it as the on the general.
Yeah.
So the details have to be telling me something. So what's it telling me? It's telling me that you only chayav for those details exactly, but not for other things. That was Rava's view. We have clearly we have Rabbi Elazar that says that plowing doesn't get malchus. Yeah. There's an interesting thought about whenever the Gemara does this. It says Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Elazar, Chadam are this and Chadam are that. Is the Gemara matching up the first one with the first statement and the second one with the second statement? Over here it is. Chadam are like it. That's Rabbi Yechanan's view. Rabbi Elazar would be the Eina like it. Yeah, we'd have to go through Shas and see if that matches up.
Faster, get on it. Stay.
Yeah. This is what's it called? There's an essay on this. Reuven Margalius. He has an essay on all the Chadamar. Which one it
Does it match up?
yeah. Who's who? Yeah. So Rabbi Yechanan Amar, Rabbi Yechanan says no. What Rav Dimi meant, Rabbi Yechanan isn't explaining Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi is like a student of Rabbi Yechanan, is a traveler. This was a statement that Rav Dimi brings from much earlier. And the explanation for this statement is explained by Rabbi Elazar and explained by Rabbi Yechanan. But this statement was probably like an early brisa. So Rabbi Yechanan says, you know what it's talking about? That the Tosefes, Yamim Sheisifu Chachamim Lefnei Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, this is an interesting thing with Shemitah, is that Shemitah doesn't actually start, at least in the Mishnayos, it doesn't start by Shemitah. It starts, could be 6 months before Shemitah. Why? Because you're not allowed to prepare the land for the growth of the 7th year either.
Right.
You're only allowed to do 6th year production. But anything that would be preparing the land for the 7th year is also prohibited. So Rabbi Yechanan explains it like this. Not that we're talking about plowing on Shemitah. That was Rabbi Elazar's pshat. He says that the sages added days lifnei Rosh Hashanah. V'achi kamar yachal yilkal teisefes Rosh Hashanah. Maybe a person should get malchus for the work of the field that he does before Rosh Hashanah. The asimi b'charish v'katzir tishbeis. The pasuk b'charish v'katzir tishbeis is said regarding Shabbos. It says 6 days you should work, 7th day you should stop, and you should not plow and harvest. It's talking about the Shabbos. But the Gemara tells us that I don't need it to tell me Shabbos. I know the malachos of Shabbos. It doesn't need to tell me about plowing and harvesting. It's talking about Shemitah. Then the Gemara says, but for Shemitah, I also know that you're not allowed to plow and harvest. You know what it's telling me? It's telling me that Erev Shemitah, the 6th year, you're also not allowed to, if it's preparation for the 7th year production. However, the teaching tells us that a person's exempt. As we'll explain. What are you talking about that the days before Rosh Hashanah? Kiditanan, it was taught in the Mishnah like this. This is the first Mishnah in Masechta Shvius. Ad masei charshin b'steil on erev Shvius. How long are you allowed to plow in an orchard, in a field of trees in the sixth year? Beishamai yemrim kol zman sheyafal aperi. Beishamai says, as long as it's good, it's helpful for the fruits that are growing now. How long is that? It's approximately until Shavuos time. Basil Leimer Adatzeres. Basil says it's until Shavuos. The Krevim Divrei Elul Yeska Divrei Elul. And by the way, those statements are very close in time. It's not really a machlekes. It's about the same time. It's different ways of saying the same thing. Yeah. Well, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's a limud from the pasuk. You just don't get malchus for it. Let's see further. The Gemara is going to ask. Now it says further. It's a continuation of the Mishnah. Mishnah Beis. But Masei Charshim stay alavan erev Shvius. How long are you allowed to plow in a grain field? Not before. The first Mishnah was in a orchard. Now it's a grain field. A grain field is called stay alavan, a white field. The reason is because there's no shade. So it's just sun. Erev Shvius, Mishetichla Alecha. You see, during the winter, there's a lot of rain, hopefully, and the soil is wet. So as long as the soil is wet, you're still allowed to plow, because that's all for the benefit of that grain, but it's not preparing it for the next year. Because people would plant cucumbers and pumpkins when the soil is still moist. They would be able to just throw the seeds down towards the end of the winter. The soil is still moist. You're still allowed to plant them. You're still allowed to plow, because that's still all sixth year production. Once it dries out entirely, then the plowing that you're doing is softening the soil for the seventh year. That you're not allowed to do. Reb Shimon says, Imkain, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to say that you're allowed to plant, you're allowed to plow as long as the soil is still moist, and people are planting cucumbers and gourds. You're not giving a set time. Everyone's going to say, oh yeah, my soil's a little wet. Everyone will have a different time. A grain field, you're allowed to plow until Pesach. And if it's an orchard, it's until Shavuos. We need a set time. Okay, Pesach is not in the Mishnayos. Rab Shimon ben Pasi, Rab Yeshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Rab Shimon ben Pasi says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. I think we mentioned that Shimon ben Pasi, he was the one that wanted to become rich. And Pasi meant gold. They started to call him Ben Pasi. Someone showed up in the yeshiva and gave a huge donation. He wants to give it to the students. And I forget who his teacher was, Reb Shimon bar Yochai or something. And says, no, it can't be Reb Shimon bar Yochai. It says, give it to this Talmud. He wants to be rich. So he gives it to him. Then afterwards he complained, why do you give me all this money? I don't want money. I want Torah or something. Anyway. So he says the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he says the name of Bar Kapara, Rabbi Gamliel Bestine Nimnal Shnei Prakim Alalo Batlam. Rabbi Gamliel, he did away with this extra prohibition of the sixth year. And you can plow all the way up to the seventh year, all the way up to the seventh, to Rosh Hashanah. There's no prohibitions of the sixth year. Yeah. Amali Reb Zeir LeRabavo. Reb Zeir says to Rabavo, these are students of Rabbi Yochanan. Amila Rish Lakish LeRabbi Yochanan. And some say it was Rish Lakish that said to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Gamliel Beistina, Takanta de Beishami Beisila. There was a takana of Beishami and Beisila that said that you can't plow an orchard past Shavuos. Comes along Rabbi Gamliel several generations later, and just does away with that takana. But we have a Mishnah that says, Ein bezdin yachal levatal divrei bezdin chaveru elam ken gadol mena b'chachma b'binyan. You can never do away with an earlier psak unless this bezdin is greater in size and in wisdom and in size. Yeah, how do you have a larger size?
That would bankrupt the entire American tradition.
No. Yeah. Well, we have the American system is based on Constitution, but it's also it also keeps getting adjusted. So, yeah, how does it work in the Torah? Does it get adjusted? You always have to follow that's basically the same thing. You always have to follow interpretation that was given on it based on previous, it's the same sort of law. It's not like in the European laws is every court can interpret however they want. They don't need previous.
You're saying the only way you could adjust it is if the later court is smarter.
Yeah.
How do you measure that?
Yeah, I don't know how do you measure the smart wisdom, and I also don't know how do you have a court that's larger than 71 judges. Yeah, it must be including the students or something. I'm not sure. I don't know how that works because we didn't have a larger court.
Professor get on that one also.
So whatever the case is, so it's either Rab Zeir asking Rabavo, or Reish Lakish asking Rabbi Yechanan. Eshtaymin kisha chada quotes this pasuk in Daniel that says he was shocked, stunned. He doesn't know what to respond. Amalei, then he thinks about it. He says, maybe the original decree was that if a bezdin is ever going to show up, that's going to want to get rid of it, we let them. We only did it for as long as it's going to last before a bezdin shows up. Interesting teretz. It's a way to do away with every takana. Yeah.
Listening to a documentary.
No. I'm putting the stuff. Watch out.
The length of a meter,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, Europeans. So every time there was a new king or queen, they changed the measurement of the meter. So the previous one had it from the elbow to the finger, then the one came. The next one, the queen, she changed it from her arm to the pinky, and it just every single time it changed until
That's it. Time up. Time up.
Royal thing to.
Time up.
That's very interesting.
Time up.
Is this specifically about the meter, or was it?
It started on measurements and then they got into the meter itself. It's on CuriosityStreet.com, which is only that. But it was just fact because
he blew
Amma and how much it's
right.
Sir, we don't want to throw you out.
I said this was by this side.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Every single time.
Do you know that when they did the thermometer, Fahrenheit and Kelvin, whatever, they originally made Celsius, I don't know. Yeah, they originally made that they started 0 was, I think, the boiling point, and then the numbers getting higher was actually getting colder.
So confusing.
And then they realized this is not going to work, and they switched it, and they put 0 at, well, if Celsius is whatever. 0 is the freezing point, and then the numbers go up because you can go up infinite, you can't go down infinite. Okay, so what's happening here? We're saying that Rabbi Yochanan says that the statement that Rabdimi brought, well, it's not, he's explaining that statement, that Yachal Yilka al Tesefes, maybe you should get Malkus for Chayresh, maybe you should get Malkus for the additional. He says that's referring to maybe you should get Malkus for the days before getting Malkus if you do work before Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara says, what is that all about? So we quoted a Mishnah that explained it. And then we said that Rabban Gamliel got rid of it. We asked, how does Rabban Gamliel get rid of it? Beis Din is not allowed to take away something that an earlier Beis Din did. We said, well, the earlier Beis Din only said that it should exist as long as no other Beis Din shows up. Did hui? The Gemara asks, is this a statement? Is this prohibition of plowing or of working the field in the 6th year that came from Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? Halach l'Moshe miSinai. This goes way back. This is a tradition from Moshe. Damar Rabasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rab Nechunya ben Bikas Beis Charson. We had this in Sukkah. It says over there. It says Rabasi says name of Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rab Nechunya, Ish Bikas Beis Charson. That there's 3 halachas that are halach l'Moshe miSinai. One of them is Eser Netiyas. We'll explain in a second. The other one is Arava, the willow that's used in the Beis Hamikdash. They put it on the side of the Mizbeach on Sukkos. V'nisach hamayim, in the water libation, the pouring of the water. Halach l'Moshe miSinai. Those are halach l'Moshe miSinai. Now, what was that first one? Eser Netiyas. Over there it says, it's explained that if you have 10 saplings, you're allowed to water an entire base a field, 50 amas by 50 amas. You're allowed to plow it and take care of it because those are young saplings, and you can work the whole field just because those saplings would die if you don't plow and water that area. Now, when are you allowed to do this? Erev Shemitah. Before Shemitah, not on Shemitah. Erev Shemitah. And what's this rule? Halacha l'Moshe miSinai that has a special permission that allows you to do this. That means that if it's not Eser Netiyas, then you're not allowed to do it. That means that it's not a Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. It's halacha l'Moshe miSinai that forbids Erev Shemitah, the 6th year. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Ki gmiri hilchasa shleishim yom lefnei Rosh Hashanah. The halach l'Moshe miSinai was 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. V'asu hani, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai came along, tikkun mi Pesach and mi Atzeres. They instituted further back from Pesach and Shavuos, not just the month of Elul. Elul is halach l'Moshe miSinai. From Pesach and Shavuos is also Asu. V'asnu b'didu, and they put a condition that that whoever wants to take it away can take it away, which Rabban Gamliel did. Rabban Gamliel Beis Din took it away. Bahani hilchasaninu, the Gemara says, and this is really a halach l'Moshe miSinai. Kroininu. This is actually a pasuk. The Tanan, or maybe it's supposed to be the Tanya. Yeah, it's supposed to be the Tanya. That's the pasuk that we quoted before that we said was actually referring to Shabbos, but the Gemara learns that it's referring to Shemitah. That says that you can't plow and you can't harvest. Rabbi Kiva Eimer ein tzarich leimer charish v'katzer shel shvius shrei kvar nemer sad chalis Yisrael v'karma chalis Yisrael. I don't need that pasuk. I have a pasuk by Shemitah that says clearly that you're not allowed to sow and you're not allowed to prune. You know what that pasuk is referring to? This is Rabbi Akiva's view, that it's coming to tell me that even the months before Shemitah, you already have to stop plowing. It's a Tosefes Shemitah, like Tosefes Shabbos. You have to start earlier. You have to start Shemitah earlier. The Katzer shel Shvius, and you're not allowed to harvest the Shemitah grain even after Shemitah, because that's considered Shemitah produce. a special type of harvest. You can't harvest it all together and all of that. You're allowed to harvest the way you're allowed to harvest on Shemitah, which is you're allowed to take what you need. Yeah. So that's Rabbi Akiva's view. What's happening here is that what are you telling me that it's Allah l'Moshe Misinai? It's a pasuk, according to Rabbi Akiva. Yeah.
I didn't catch that. That you can harvest on Shemitah what you need.
No, you're allowed to go out into the field and well, I'm going to cook something now. I'm allowed to go out and take that. But you can't harvest it like a farmer would harvest his produce.
Yeah, I guess they live in the supermarket.
You would go and take what you need.
Foraging.
Yeah,
What's it called?
foraging.
Foraging. You go out and look for something that's
Some
growing.
berries.
Berry. Don't you do that? Forage. Go to the neighbor's house. How is it? ORAG.
After class.
In the Bronx.
You know how many trees in the Bronx? A lot. There's nothing to forage. No wonder.
In the Bronx,
Bronx.
when
Lucky
in the
it's-
Bronx, they called stealing foraging.
That's what I just said.
Right. Okay.
Oh, like,
Arrest the guy for stealing your apples. That was just foraging. There's no
it was
trespass.
just the foraging.
Rabbi Shmuel says, Ma charish rishus, af katzer rishus. He says that this is a special limud. It's coming to tell me actually about Shabbos. Rabbi Shmuel says it's actually telling me something about Shabbos. That what? That on Shabbos, you're not allowed to plow and you're not allowed to harvest. But what type of harvest are you not allowed to do on Shabbos? Harvesting that's not a mitzvah. Comparing it to plowing. There is no such thing as plowing that's a mitzvah. But there is such a thing as harvesting that's a mitzvah. So because it says together, plowing and harvesting, it's coming to tell me that which harvesting is prohibited on Shabbos, harvesting that's similar to plowing, which is never a mitzvah. However, harvesting that is a mitzvah, yatsa ktsir ha'omer shehi mitzvah. That excludes harvesting the omer, the barley that's used in the omer sacrifice, the toasted barley. That is a mitzvah. And if Pesach falls out on Shabbos, you're allowed to harvest that grain on Shabbos in the day after Pesach Litzbrah. That's what Rabbi Shmuel is telling me based on that this pasuk is teaching. Whatever the case is, going back to Rabbi Akiva, we just have a question here that why are you telling me it's Allah l'Moshe Misinai about Erev Shemitah? Turns out it's a pasuk. Elam Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Tigmir Hilchasa. The Allah l'Moshe Misinai was the Mishra Yalda. That was coming to allow, the Allah l'Moshe Misinai was telling me that the saplings is permissible. Kroi, what was the pasuk telling me? L'Meisar Zakena was coming to tell me that it's that an older tree is prohibited. The pasuk is telling me that you're not allowed to plow a field, an orchard, plow in an orchard. That's for an older tree. And the Halach L'Moshe Sinai is telling me the exclusion of the younger tree, of the saplings that you're allowed to. Yeah. So we have psukim that forbid strong trees, so plowing around strong trees. We have Halach L'Moshe Sinai that permits the saplings. The Gemara says, "Ukiven the hilchas al mishra yalda." If I needed a halacha l'Moshe Sinai to permit young trees, that would automatically also tell me lav memela zaken asira. Would that not tell me automatically why are you permitting it? It must be because generally it's prohibited. The older trees are prohibited, and the Halach L'Moshe Sinai is permitting something that was prohibited. It would teach that the permissibility would teach me already that it's everything else is prohibited. The exception would teach me the rule. Ela hilchas el Rabbi Yishmael krei Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara answers like this. We have here Machlekes Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says that I learned from the pasuk that erev Shemitah it's prohibited. Rabbi Yishmael said that pasuk is telling me that the omer is allowed to be harvested on Shabbos. What about erev Shemitah? He has the Halach L'Moshe Sinai. He doesn't have the pasuk for that. Rabbi Yechanan says, Rabbi Gamliel Beistina, we're going back. Rabbi Yitzchak told me that the halacha l'Moshe Sinai was 30 days. And Hillel and Shammai taught me from Pesach and Shavuos. Rabbi Yechanan says, Amar Rabbi Gamliel Beistina midei Raisa batalahu. We had a problem. We had a problem before. How could Ram Gamliel, we had a question. How could Ram Gamliel take away what Hillel and Shammai instituted? Now we're explaining, Rabbi Yechanan says that he found the support in the Torah. How does this go? My timer. What's the support? Gomer Shabbos Mishabbos Bereshis. It says by Shemitah Shabbos that it's resting. It says by Shabbos every week, Shabbos, it says resting. So Mala Halan Hi Asura Lefanel Acharem Mutarim. Just like by a regular Shabbos, it's only Asur on Shabbos. But before Shabbos, it's permissible to do work, and after Shabbos, it's permissible. Afkan Hi Asura Lefanel Acharem Mutarim. Also by Shemitah, it's only prohibited on Shemitah, but not before Shemitah and after Shemitah. Over there, it's permissible. Maskefla Ravashi. Ravashi has a question on this. Mandamar Hilchasa. What did Rabbi Yechanan come along and do? He made a Gzeir Shabbat. He said, it says Shabbos here, it says Shabbos there, a verbal analogy. It says, just like over here, the rule is that it's permissible before and after. So to by Shemitah, it's permissible before and after. Ravashi says, 1 second. Mandamar Hilchasa. One that says that it's a tradition from Moshe. Asik Gzeir Shava Akre Hilchasa. Rabbi Yechanan is giving us a Gzeir Shava, but apparently the Gzeir Shava it needs to come from a tradition. But what exactly the Gzeir Shava is, Rabbi Yechanan is interpreting. How could Rabbi Yechanan tell me a Gzeir Shava that uproots a halacha l'Moshe Sinai?
Right.
That says that there is a halacha before, at least 30 days, we thought. 30 days before that you're not allowed to do work. Amanda Makra, and the one that says that it's a pasuk. Who was that? Rabbi Akiva. Asi Gzeir Shava Akra Kra. The Gzeir Shava comes and uproots the pasuk. We learned it from a pasuk. Elam Ravashi explains, Rabbi Gamliel Beisdine Savri Lak Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Gamliel holds like Rabbi Yishmael Damar Hilchasa Gemirila. That says that it's a tradition, right? Because Rabbi Yishmael didn't have the pasuk. Rabbi Yishmael says the pasuk is teaching me that the Omer is allowed to be harvested on Shabbos. So what about Erev Shemitah? He says that's a tradition. Now, what was that tradition? Halach l'Moshe Sinai. That's Bisman Beis Hamikdash Kayam. That's only while the Beis Hamikdash was there. Similar to the water libation, which is also only when the Beis Hamikdash is there, and therefore, Bisman Beis Hamikdash Kayam. But if the Beis Hamikdash isn't there, then we don't have that. Then we don't have that tradition. And Rabbi Gamliel does away with it, based on the Gzeir Shava. Yeah, it's a lot to discuss here. Okay. And this is, does that make a difference if Shemitah is the Raisa or the Rabbanan? I don't know.
I was asking if Shemitah requires a pronouncement. If the sun had them like Yovel requires.
I don't know.
It does, then it automatically run it.
Oh, that's interesting. Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know. Let's leave it over here.